Hello, everyone. Welcome to our presentation entitled Think Globally, Act Locally, Build Stronger Distributed Agile Teams. My name is Darko, and this is my colleague and co-speaker, Amela.
Hello from me also. I'm happy that I'm here with you and that I'm part of Tricentis Accelerate this year. And this will be a short presentation, but feel free to jump in if you have any comments or something to add, because we want this to be more an interaction between us.
Why we are here and why we are presenting this to you. We are coming from Comtrade Digital Services Sarajevo from Bosnia. Comtrade is the largest IT organization in Southeast Europe with more than 1,500 employees. Our headquarters is in Dublin, Ireland, but our company has offices in several countries in the world. All these on map, and beside these countries we have offices in Dubai and in Manila, Philippines. Considering this, it's easy to conclude how we got the idea for our presentation and why we are presenting this. I'm working in distributed team for 5 and Amela for 10 years.
Yes, just to add one more thing before we continue, make sure to drop by our booth because we have a special prize for you. You can win the free ticket for next year's Quest for Quality. It is a software testing conference in Dublin that is organized by Comtrade Digital Services.
Agile development was initially planned for teams that are physically located in the same room. Working in the same office maximizes collaboration and face-to-face conversation. But that is an ideal case that is not achievable for a large number of international companies. But as we all know, nowadays we have a lot of international companies that successfully deliver software developed by distributed teams. And since companies get more and more global, that is something that really should not be avoided. One of the principles behind Agile Manifesto says that the most efficient and effective way of exchanging information is face-to-face conversation. But as we all know, Agile Manifesto was released 16 years ago, and a lot of things changed since then. Face-to-face conversation is not possible when we have distributed teams. They are not on the same location, and it is privilege of teams that are physically located in the same office. But a lot of distributed teams successfully using agile methodologies in their everyday work. And we personally believe that this is not necessarily anti-agile.
Of course, there are a lot of benefits when you work in distributed teams. First, you can hire the best candidate for the position, regardless of their location. And we all know that working with different people from different backgrounds, it helps to create a bigger picture. More and more companies today offer flexibility for their workers to work when, where, and how they choose to. You don't have to show up in the office anymore at 9 a.m., stay there for 8 hours straight. Instead, if you have a long weekend, you can work from your beach house or do whatever you want during the break. Yes, good point. Actually, just I wanted to ask now, before we go through some of the challenges that we have identified, how many of you are working currently in distributed team?
Okay, as we expected, most of you. Can you please share with us your number one problem that you face during work in distributed agile teams?
Collaboration, yes. And you already mentioned time zones, and you asked about boards. We'll talk about that as part of the presentation as well. If that's okay with you, we can continue, and afterwards we can maybe discuss. Okay, the first and the biggest challenge that we have all observed is obviously the communication, because face-to-face communication has no substitute. It helps build the relationship between people, establish level of trust among them. And we never think about this, but the big part of every communication is non-verbal communication. It's a body language, facial expression. It's actually 70% of every communication. And when your colleague from office comes in the morning, you can see on his face immediately if he's happy or sad or worried with something, and you can approach him. You can ask him, is everything okay? Can I help you somehow? Let's go for a coffee together, let's get lunch together, and so on. And you cannot do this when you work in distributed teams because you basically don't know those people. You don't drink coffee with them, you don't socialize with them, they're strangers for you. And unfortunately, I was in this situation a couple of times before. When things go wrong on the project, or we become we, they become them, it's always us against them, and every side tries to blame each other. And since you asked how to handle meetings and stand-ups and everything, there are so many tools for communication nowadays. Just to be clear, we're not advertising any of these tools, Skype or Slack or anything. But we simply put some of the tools that we were using in our work. And because we realized it's much better not to communicate using emails, because then you have delay in communication, you have people adding other people, a lot of chain messages, it's hard to follow. The best way is to have video conference calls, because then people have the feeling that they work with the actual person on the other side. And also, you can see the facial expression of the person you are talking to. You can see if he's rolling his eyes or yawning while you are talking and stuff like that. And instead of spending meetings in a conference room, discussing, writing on a board, you spend a lot of time connected to online meetings. And we're not going to mention network issues, connection problems, and so on. It's only part of the problem. But also, I saw some of my colleagues for the first time during those calls. This project I was working on, our team was distributed on 4 locations. We had a product owner in USA, developers and Scrum Master in Dublin, in Ireland, manual testers in India, and I was the only one working on test automation in Sarajevo. When we just started working, we had stand-up every morning at 11 a.m. And the team from Dublin, they joined through the phone into the conference with the rest of us. We were using Skype for Business. It was really frustrating because they had a physical board in their conference room and they were writing on a board. We didn't see anything. And I didn't know who is talking, how many people are present there. And they usually forget about you if you don't talk, if you don't ask anything. It's hard to follow. And also, important thing was that after that meeting, they had a coffee together. So they continued talking about their tasks and discussions. So I was left out, usually. They forgot to inform me about some changes they did. I would spend hours later trying to figure out what has changed, why the application is not working as before. And it was really frustrating. And also sometimes they decided to have a short meeting, short notice meeting, and they would schedule it. It was like half an hour meeting, but I was sometimes on my lunch break already, which is 1 hour, and I would usually miss those meetings. They didn't think it's a big deal because I was the only one, and on the same location there were 5 or 6 team members. Another thing that was challenging are holidays, because they have different holidays than we have, and then people in India have also different holidays. So sometimes you're not working when there is a planning session and you miss those sessions and retrospectives and everything. So we tried to resolve that. I tried to resolve that, asking them to record those sessions because they were online. And then I could look that later on and prepare questions if I have.
As we already mentioned, face-to-face communication has no substitute. If you have distributed team, and especially if you are team manager of distributed team, it's mandatory to afford them face time as much as it is possible. It can be done in the form of team building, on-site work, or something similar. 2 years ago, I worked in a multi-site team. Most of the time, I worked with my colleague from Ljubljana while I was in Sarajevo. We worked for almost 6 months before we had a chance to meet each other in person on the training. During 5 days on that training, we had a chance to talk about non-work related topics, about sports, about some things from private life, even to make some jokes. And our collaboration after that training was way, way much better. So conclusion is simple. We worked much better when we had a chance to discover our common passion for beer. I'm joking. when we had a chance to meet each other in person and socialize. Once a year, we have one big team building when we have a chance to meet our teammates and have fun together. Also, during the year, our company makes an effort to gather us on the same location during major planning sessions for a week, and that is every 3 or 4 months. Also, if there is a need for knowledge transfer, we travel to meet our co-workers on the same locations, and all these things proved to be a very big help for us. Another challenge that we observed during our work in distributed teams is working in different time zones. When you need feedback or help or to ask any questions, it's good practice if team, and an ideal case is when team is located at least in the same time zone. But we all know that that is not always the case. So every team needs to make an effort to have constant information flow. For example, when I come to work in the morning, my team in Dublin is not in the office yet. So if I need help, I need to wait them to come to work. Since they are coming to work after me, they are staying longer at work, and sometimes meetings were scheduled outside my working hours, so I had to stay overtime or join from home. And it can be really annoying. And that's how we get to another challenge that we observed during our work in distributed teams. Since I'm working in distributed team from the very beginning of my professional career, I worked in a distributed teams on all projects. Part of the teams were in India and USA on current project. Beside India and USA, part of the team is in Dublin, in Ireland. At the first, I would say not a big deal. What is the problem there? But when you try to schedule a meeting for the whole team, for example, daily stand-up or any other meeting where whole team needs to be present, then you realize that that is not a piece of cake. That is the main reason why every team needs to make an effort to maximize time effectiveness when the whole team is available. If that is not accomplished, next chance for feedback, for asking any questions or help from your colleagues is tomorrow. So you are basically losing one working day, and that is really big problem. Code reviews also plays an important role here. Since people are located at different locations and they are available at different times, good practice is to share knowledge about code between locations, because that makes support much easier.
Same as for communication, collaboration decreases when you work in this kind of team, because people are less likely to communicate and collaborate with someone they didn't meet in person, especially over something that is maybe not that interesting for you at the moment, but it has a great impact on the whole team's work in the end. And it took me a lot of time to earn trust from my colleagues, and for me especially, since I was the QA and they were developers, that's another part of that, and for me to trust them as well. Today there are so many tools for collaboration as well. Here, again, we just mentioned some of them. We are not advertising any tools, but I still believe that most of us here are using these or some other tools in our everyday work. But I would say that tool is there to increase transparency and to make collaboration easier, but in the end, teammates are the one that need to make additional effort to communicate, to collaborate with everyone else. I think the best way is to have a set of rules that applies to all team members and for everyone to follow those rules. Another area that requires focus when you are working in this kind of team are language and cultural differences. English is #1 language of technology. It is basically the first foreign language taught in many countries. And I consider that I speak English fluently at working proficiency. But most of the people that I have worked with are not native English speakers, like myself. And I think that no matter how solid knowledge you gain of the foreign language, you are still always influenced by your mother tongue. And I still had some misunderstandings due to language differences when I wasn't sure what was expected from me, or the other person didn't know what I needed from them. And also, every culture has its norms and customs that need to be understood. Although I think national culture is not something that always influences work, because there are so many international companies today with people coming from different cultural backgrounds, and they deliver great stuff together. I think that something that is more important is company culture. The reasons for that is because they're working in the environment that strongly supports company culture. But nevertheless, you should always make sure that you know the culture of your client or offshore teams, because especially when it comes to humor, for example, something that is considered funny in your country maybe could be at least puzzling or even offensive in someone else's culture. And in our company, we had this practice of organizing workshops about culture of people we work with. So far, I have attended two of those workshops. One is for working with people from USA, and the other one was about Irish culture. At first, I thought this is such a waste of time. Why do you need this? I mean, there are people like us. But soon, when working with them, I realized that there are some differences between, for example, communication styles. My experience, this is only my experience, maybe it's not in general, but some people that I have worked with from USA, they are quite upfront and direct. And also, they like meetings to start sharp on time. So we always joined a couple of minutes earlier, and they really appreciated that.
A lot of professionals do not consider this as a problem or challenge, but we believe that emotional impact is very important. A few years ago, when I started to work in a support team, I was the only one who was remote. And after some time in working in that team, I started to feeling left out. I even want to give up, to change the project. I thought I couldn't work like that anymore. Since I was new in that team, I needed help. And I was pinging one person after another on Slack for help, but they were all ignored me, since in that moment they had their own work to do. So they just ignored me, and it's really easy to ignore someone who is not in the same room with you. Out of sight, out of the heart. Unfortunately, this is sometimes true, because it's easy to ignore someone who is not in the room with you. And when you are the only one who is remote, you get easily forgotten about, and there is no one to see what you worked on. And after some time, it becomes annoying for me that all things that happened, and we resolved that by returning to basics of Scrum, because particular story is not only my responsibility. It is the whole team responsibility, because whole team is responsible for delivering working increment at the end of the sprint. During my professional career, I worked in two totally different distributed teams. First was, I worked with a couple of people at the same location, while other team members were distributed. And working in that kind of distributed team is much easier. After that, I worked in other team, and I was the only one who was remote. Other team members were on same location. If our point of view is visibility of work, then this is a really great challenge. When I just started to work in that team, we had daily stand-up. And during daily stand-up, we agreed on which bug I will work on that day. On next stand-up, I heard from my colleagues that some of them worked on that bug too. What happened between two stand-ups? They had a coffee break, and they discussed bugs that we have in our backlog, and that particular bug. And they got some ideas how to resolve it. Instead of contact me, they just ignored me and started to work on that bug, and it was really frustrating for me. It happened few times. I realized that part of problem lies in me as well, because I needed to become more proactive, to participate in every meeting and every discussion, to ask more questions, and the most important thing, not to assume anything. When I started to do all these things, it became hard for them to ignore me. And that was really good, since I'm a people person and I like talking to people. And after some time, I started feeling appreciated and that I'm contributing to team. And the most important thing regarding this, I would like to share with you is that it's all up to you. You are the one, and you have to make yourself visible. From time to time, every team becomes distributed teams. We know that all companies today offer benefits for their employees, like working from home. If one or more than one employee working from home, team is distributed because they are not working at the same location. Same is for business trips. We personally believe that all teams need to adapt to this change and have to learn how to deliver work effectively and collaborate effectively when they are not located at the same location. And something that we really believe is that this need to be a part of company culture.
Yes, and as we already mentioned, there are so many good tools now for communication and collaboration. You just need to find the right one for you and for your team. And if you're part of these teams, so please have some understanding for people that are off-site. And when they're asking you or reaching out, make sure to find time to answer as quickly as possible. And also, you should ask for help whenever it is needed. And I would say that the big responsibility here lies on Scrum Master as well, because the Scrum Master is the person that needs to facilitate the retrospectives so that all issues related to working in distributed teams are identified and the proper steps are taken.
As a conclusion of our presentation, we picked this quote by Ricky Rogers. Strength doesn't come from things you can do, it comes from overcoming the things you once thought you couldn't. This is applicable to distributed agile teams, because we already mentioned that agile teams are mentioned to be planned to be thanks planned to be in same room. But as we all know, today that is not the case. We would just like to add one more thing at the end. It's not the methodologies or frameworks that succeed or fail. Team is the one that succeed or fail. Thank you.